The emergency room at St. Catherine's Hospital in Portland, Oregon, never truly slept. Even at 3 in the morning, there were always sounds: the beep of monitors, the whisper of ventilators, the soft shuffle of nurses' shoes on linoleum floors. For Jennifer Torres, the night shift had become as familiar as breathing. She'd been working as an ER nurse for 6 years, and the odd hours no longer bothered her the way they once had. In fact, she'd grown to prefer them. The night shift paid better, the ER was less chaotic than during the day, and she liked the tight-knit community of night workers who understood what it meant to live on a schedule that ran counter to the rest of the world. Jennifer was 32 years old, divorced with no children, living in a small apartment in southeast Portland. She was petite, barely 5'3", with dark hair she always wore pulled back in a tight bun for work, and warm brown eyes that patients found comforting even in their worst moments. She had a reputation for being competent, compassionate, and unflappable under pressure. When trauma cases came through the doors at 2 in the morning, Jennifer was the nurse everyone wanted on duty. On the night of October 17, 1995, Jennifer clocked in for her shift at 11 p.m., just like she had 3 nights a week for the past 6 years. It was a Tuesday, typically one of the slower nights, though you could never really predict what the ER would bring. She stopped by the break room to stash her lunch, leftover pasta and a Diet Coke, and exchanged greetings with the other night shift nurses arriving for duty. "Hey, Jenny," called out Marcus Webb, one of the orderlies, as she passed through the hallway. "You catch the Blazers game last night?" Jennifer smiled. Marcus was always trying to engage her in sports talk, even though she'd told him repeatedly that she didn't follow basketball. He was 26, tall and athletic, with an easy smile and a friendly demeanor that made him popular with both staff and patients. He'd been working at St. Catherine's for about 8 months, starting in February, and had quickly become a fixture on the night shift. "You know I don't watch basketball, Marcus," she replied, shaking her head with amusement. "You're missing out. Blazers are looking good this year. I'm telling you, this could be their year." "I'll take your word for it," she said, continuing toward the nurses' station. It was a conversation they'd had dozens of times before, comfortable and routine. Marcus was harmless, she thought, just a friendly guy trying to make small talk during the long night hours. She had no reason to think otherwise. The shift began normally enough. A construction worker came in with a badly lacerated hand. A college student arrived with alcohol poisoning. An elderly woman with chest pain needed immediate attention. Jennifer moved through her duties with practiced efficiency, starting IVs, taking vital signs, administering medications, documenting everything in patient charts. Around 1:30 in the morning, during a brief lull, Jennifer sat at the nurse's station catching up on paperwork. Marcus appeared with a cup of coffee, setting it down beside her. "Thought you could use this," he said. "It's the good stuff from the doctor's lounge, not that sludge from the cafeteria." Jennifer looked up, surprised. "Oh, thanks. You didn't have to do that." "No problem. You look tired." "It's been a long week," she admitted, taking a sip. The coffee was indeed better than the usual fare. "I picked up an extra shift on Sunday, and I'm feeling it now." "You work too hard," Marcus said, leaning against the counter. "You ever take time for yourself? Go out, have fun?" Jennifer felt a slight twinge of discomfort at the personal question, but brushed it off. People made small talk on the night shift. It helped pass the time. "Not as much as I should, probably. Between work and trying to maintain some kind of normal life, there's not much time left over." "You should let me take you out sometime," Marcus said, and his tone was casual, but there was something in his eyes that made Jennifer's internal alarm system ping softly. "Get your mind off work, you know. There's a great Mexican place downtown." "That's sweet of you to offer," Jennifer said carefully, "but I don't really date people from work. It gets complicated." Sure, I get it," Marcus said quickly, his smile never wavering. "Just thought I'd ask. Offer's always open, though, if you change your mind." He walked away, and Jennifer returned to her paperwork, but something about the interaction sat uneasily with her. It wasn't that Marcus had done anything wrong. He'd been perfectly polite when she declined. But there was something about the way he'd watched her as she drank the coffee, something about the intensity behind his casual demeanor that felt slightly off. She made a mental note to maintain more distance, to keep their interactions professional. She'd dealt with unwanted attention before, occupational hazard of being a woman in a hospital, unfortunately, and she knew how to handle it. Be friendly but firm, set boundaries, don't engage beyond what's necessary for work. The rest of the night passed without incident. More patients came and went. Jennifer treated a teenager with a broken arm from skateboarding, a man with kidney stones, a woman having a panic attack. The ER settled into its familiar rhythm of controlled chaos, punctuated by moments of relative calm. At 6:45 a.m., Jennifer's replacement arrived for the day shift. She gave report on her patients, cleaned up the nurse's station, and gathered her things from her locker. She was exhausted. Her feet ached, her back was sore, and all she wanted was to go home, take a hot shower, and sleep for 8 hours. The parking garage where staff parked was a 5-story concrete structure connected to the hospital by a covered walkway on the second floor. Hospital security escorted employees to their cars if requested, but Jennifer had never bothered. The garage was well lit and generally safe, and her car was usually parked on the second level, right near the walkway entrance. It seemed unnecessarily paranoid to ask for an escort every time she finished a shift. This morning, however, she'd arrived later than usual and had been forced to park on the 4th floor, one of the higher, less populated levels. As she pushed through the heavy door from the walkway into the garage stairwell, the fluorescent lights flickering overhead, she felt a momentary hesitation. The parking garage always felt creepier during those strange hours between night and day, when most people were still asleep, but the world was beginning to wake up. She started climbing the stairs, her work bag over her shoulder, her keys already in her hand, a habit she'd developed years ago, always having her keys ready before reaching her car. The stairwell echoed with her footsteps, the sound bouncing off concrete walls painted industrial gray. She was halfway between the 3rd and 4th floors when she heard the door below her open and close. Footsteps on the stairs, coming up fast. Jennifer's heart rate picked up slightly, but she told herself not to be ridiculous. Other people worked here. Other people parked in this garage. There was no reason to be afraid. But when she glanced back, she saw Marcus Webb, 2 flights below, climbing the stairs quickly. "Hey, Jenny, wait up," he called out, his voice echoing in the stairwell. She stopped, waiting, trying to calm the sudden spike of adrenaline. He'd just asked her out a few hours ago. Now he was following her to her car? Coincidence? Or something else? Marcus caught up to her on the 4th floor landing, slightly out of breath. "Man, you walk fast," he said with a laugh. "I saw you heading to the garage and thought, hey, it's pretty early. I should make sure she gets to her car okay. You parked way up here today?" "Yeah, I got here late," Jennifer said, keeping her voice neutral. "Thanks, but I'm fine. My car's just right over there." She pointed through the doorway to the 4th floor of the garage, where her burgundy Honda Accord sat about 30 feet away, one of only a handful of cars on this level. "Well, I'm here now. Might as well walk you the rest of the way. It's not safe for women to be alone in parking garages, you know. You hear about stuff happening all the time." There was logic in what he said. Women were vulnerable in parking garages. She knew the statistics, knew about attacks that happened in places just like this. But something about Marcus's presence felt wrong. He'd shown interest in her. She'd rejected him. Now he was insisting on walking her to her car, despite her saying she was fine. Every self-defense class she'd ever taken, every article she'd read about women's safety, every instinct honed by years of living as a woman in the world told her to trust her gut, and her gut was screaming that something was wrong. "I appreciate it, but really, I'm okay," Jennifer said firmly. "You should get home. I'm sure you're tired." "Nah, I'm good. Come on, let's get you to your car." Marcus held the door open for her, waiting. Jennifer felt trapped. If she refused to let him walk with her, would that escalate the situation? Would it make him angry? But if she let him walk her to her car, would she be putting herself in danger? She made a split-second decision. "Actually, you know what? I forgot something in my locker. I need to go back." "Oh, I can wait." "No, really, it might take a while. I think I left my prescription in there. I need to grab it. You go ahead." She could see the frustration flash across Marcus's face, quickly masked by that easy smile. "You sure? I don't mind waiting." "I'm sure. Thanks anyway." Jennifer turned and headed back down the stairs, walking quickly but not running. Running would show fear, and she didn't want to provoke anything. She could feel Marcus's eyes on her back as she descended, could hear that he hadn't moved from the fourth-floor landing. She went back through the walkway, through the hospital, and directly to the security office on the first floor. A guard she recognized, an older man named Bill, looked up as she entered. "Nurse Torres, everything okay?" "Bill, this is going to sound paranoid, but one of the orderlies just followed me to the parking garage and insisted on walking me to my car even after I said I was fine. I got a bad feeling about it. Could you walk me to my car? It's on the fourth floor." Bill stood immediately, his hand moving to his radio. "Which orderly?" "Marcus Webb." Bill's expression grew serious. "He give you any trouble?" "Not exactly. He asked me out earlier tonight. I said no, and then he showed up in the parking garage stairwell right behind me. It might be nothing, but—" "Better safe than sorry," Bill said firmly. "Let me call for backup, and we'll walk you up together. I'll also have someone check that Marcus has left the garage." 10 minutes later, Jennifer walked to her car, escorted by Bill and another security guard. They checked her car, looking in the back seat and under the vehicle, before she got in. Marcus was nowhere to be seen. "You did the right thing coming to us," Bill told her. "Trust your instincts, they're usually right." Jennifer thanked them and drove home, but she couldn't shake the unease that had settled over her. She'd overreacted, hadn't she? Marcus was just being nice, trying to make sure she was safe. The fact that he'd asked her out and she turned him down didn't automatically make him a threat. But as she pulled into her apartment complex and sat in her car for a moment before going inside, she couldn't stop thinking about the look on Marcus's face when she'd said she needed to go back. Frustration, anger, quickly hidden, like he'd had a plan and she'd ruined it. Jennifer called in sick for her next shift on Thursday night. She told herself it was because she was genuinely exhausted, that she needed the rest. But the truth was, she didn't want to see Marcus, didn't want to face the awkwardness of their last interaction, didn't want to deal with whatever weirdness might result from her having gone to security. But she couldn't avoid work forever. When she returned for her Saturday night shift, she steeled herself for an uncomfortable encounter. Marcus wasn't there. According to the other orderlies, he'd called in sick. Jennifer felt both relieved and more anxious. Was his absence just coincidence, or was he avoiding her too? Sunday night, Marcus was back. Jennifer saw him in the hallway around midnight, transporting a patient to radiology. Their eyes met briefly. He didn't smile, didn't wave, just looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read before pushing the gurney around a corner. For the rest of that shift and the next several shifts after, Marcus seemed to be avoiding her. When they had to interact for work purposes, he was coldly professional, speaking to her only when necessary and never making eye contact longer than required. The friendly demeanor was gone, replaced by an icy distance that somehow felt more threatening than his previous attention. Other staff members noticed. "What's up with you and Marcus?" asked Sheila, another ER nurse, during a break. "You guys have a fight or something?" "Not exactly," Jennifer said carefully. "He asked me out, I said no, and now things are awkward." Sheila rolled her eyes. Classic. Guys can never just take no for an answer without making it weird. "Want me to talk to him?" "No, it's fine. The less interaction, the better, honestly." But it wasn't fine. Jennifer found herself constantly aware of where Marcus was in the hospital, constantly looking over her shoulder, constantly on edge. The job she'd once loved was becoming stressful in a way that had nothing to do with the actual work. She considered reporting him to HR, but for what? Asking her out and then being professionally distant when she declined? That wasn't harassment. She'd have to explain about the parking garage incident, but even that seemed flimsy now that time had passed. He'd offered to walk her to her car for safety. She'd declined. He'd accepted her decline. Where was the problem? The problem was the way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't paying attention. The problem was the prickle on the back of her neck whenever he was nearby. The problem was her gut telling her something was wrong, even if she couldn't articulate exactly what. 3 weeks after the parking garage incident, on November 7th, Jennifer's shift was unusually quiet. By 2 a.m., all the patients had been treated and discharged or admitted, and the ER was actually empty, a rare occurrence that the night staff knew wouldn't last long. Jennifer used the lull to restock supply rooms, a mundane task she actually found relaxing. She was in the medication room, counting inventory and checking expiration dates, when Marcus appeared in the doorway. She jumped, startled. She hadn't heard him approach. "Jesus, Marcus, you scared me," she said, hand on her chest. "Sorry," he said, but he didn't sound sorry. "I need some restraints from the supply cabinet." Jennifer nodded, moving aside to let him access the locked cabinet. Hospital policy required 2 staff members to be present when restraints were removed from inventory, a safeguard against misuse. Marcus unlocked the cabinet and pulled out a set of soft restraints, signing them out in the log. But he didn't leave. He stood there, looking at Jennifer, and the silence stretched uncomfortably. "Is there something else you need?" Jennifer finally asked. "I want to apologize," Marcus said, "for the parking garage thing. I didn't mean to freak you out. I was honestly just trying to be helpful." "It's okay," Jennifer said, though her body language remained guarded. "I appreciate the thought. I know you went to security about me." Jennifer's blood ran cold. "How did you—" "Bill mentioned it to one of the other guards, who mentioned it to me. It's fine. I get it. You were being cautious. Smart, actually." The way he said smart made Jennifer's skin crawl. There was something underneath the word, some implication she couldn't quite grasp. "I should get back to work," she said, moving toward the door. Marcus didn't step aside to let her pass. "You know what's funny? I really did like you. I thought we had a connection." "But you assumed the worst about me, didn't you? Just because I wanted to make sure you were safe." "Marcus, I need you to move." "I'm just saying, it hurt. Having you act like I was some kind of predator when all I did was be nice to you." Jennifer's heart was pounding now. The medication room suddenly felt very small, very isolated. She was acutely aware that it was 2 a.m, that this part of the hospital was empty, that the nearest other staff member was probably at the nurse's station 2 corridors away. "I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings," she said, keeping her voice steady, "but I need you to let me out of this room now." Something flickered in Marcus's eyes, anger, resentment, something darker. For a moment, Jennifer thought he wasn't going to move. Then he stepped aside with exaggerated courtesy. "By all means," he said coldly. Jennifer walked past him quickly, resisting the urge to run. She went straight to the nurse's station where Sheila was charting. "You okay?" Sheila asked, looking up. "You look pale." "Yeah, I'm fine," Jennifer lied. "Just tired." But she wasn't fine. She was scared, really, truly scared, and she was going to do something about it. The next morning, instead of going straight home, Jennifer went to the Human Resources office and filed a formal complaint against Marcus Webb. She documented the parking garage incident, his coldness after she declined his invitation, and the unsettling interaction in the medication room. The HR representative, a middle-aged woman named Patricia, listened carefully and took detailed notes. "Has Mr. Webb ever threatened you directly?" Patricia asked. "Not in so many words," Jennifer admitted, "but he cornered me in the medication room and wouldn't let me leave until I apologized for going to security about him." "Did he physically prevent you from leaving?" "He blocked the doorway." Patricia made a note. "We'll investigate this immediately. In the meantime, I'm going to recommend that you and Mr. Webb be placed on different shift schedules until this is resolved." "Thank you," Jennifer said, relief washing over her. "I want you to know that we take these complaints very seriously. You did the right thing coming forward." Jennifer left the HR office feeling like a weight had been lifted. She'd done the right thing. She'd reported him through proper channels. Now the hospital would handle it, and she could go back to focusing on her job instead of constantly looking over her shoulder. What she didn't know was that Marcus Webb had been working at hospitals for 7 years, moving from facility to facility across the Pacific Northwest. And at each hospital, there'd been complaints from female staff members, complaints of unwanted attention, of following, of boundary violations. Each time, Marcus would be quietly let go, given a neutral reference, and allowed to move on to the next job. Catherine's hospital was about to become the place where the pattern finally ended, but not in the way anyone expected. Patricia from HR called Marcus Webb into her office that afternoon. She confronted him with Jennifer's complaint, along with security reports from the parking garage incident that she'd pulled from the files. Marcus was calm, reasonable, apologetic. He explained that he'd asked Jennifer out and been rejected, which was fine. He respected her decision completely. The parking garage thing was a misunderstanding. He'd genuinely been trying to help. The medication room incident was him trying to apologize and clear the air. He absolutely hadn't meant to make her uncomfortable. "I think Nurse Torres might be misinterpreting my intentions because she feels guilty about rejecting me," Marcus said smoothly. "I've noticed she's been pretty stressed at work lately. Maybe she's not sleeping well? Night shift can do that to people." Patricia remained professional but firm. "Regardless of intentions, the impact of your behavior has made Ms. Torres uncomfortable. We're going to separate your schedules for now. You'll be moved to the Monday, Wednesday, Friday night rotation. Ms. Torres will keep her Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday schedule." Marcus's jaw tightened, but he maintained his composure. "If that's what it takes to make her feel comfortable, I understand. I also need you to have no contact with Ms. Torres outside of absolutely necessary work communications. No socializing, no personal conversations. Is that clear?" "Crystal clear," Marcus said. He left the HR office with a smile on his face and rage burning in his chest. Jennifer had gone to HR. She'd tried to get him fired. She'd portrayed him as some kind of creep when all he'd done was show interest in her, try to keep her safe. Women like Jennifer thought they were so smart, so careful, so much better than everyone else. They said they wanted nice guys. But when a nice guy showed interest, they ran to HR and filed complaints. They assumed the worst. They ruined men's reputations. Well, Jennifer Torres was going to learn that actions had consequences. She was going to learn that you couldn't just accuse someone of harassment and walk away without repercussions. Marcus had been patient, he'd been careful, but Jennifer had pushed him too far, and now she was going to pay for it. The schedule change went into effect the following week. For the first time in nearly a month, Jennifer felt like she could breathe at work. Without Marcus there, the oppressive anxiety that had been following her around the hospital lifted. She could focus on her patients again, could enjoy her work the way she used to. Sheila noticed the difference. "You seem more like yourself," she commented during a break. "Must be nice not having to deal with Marcus's weirdness." "You have no idea," Jennifer said. "I feel like I got my life back." But that feeling of safety was an illusion. Marcus wasn't done with her. He was just planning more carefully. He knew Jennifer's schedule now, knew exactly which night she worked, what time she usually left the hospital. He knew where she parked, knew the route she drove home, knew which apartment complex she lived in. He'd been collecting information for months, little pieces of data that individually meant nothing, but together painted a complete picture of her life. He started following her. Not obviously, he was too smart for that. He'd wait until she left the hospital, give her a head start, then follow at a distance. He learned which grocery store she stopped at, which coffee shop she liked, which dry cleaner she used. He learned that she went to her sister's house in Beaverton every other Sunday afternoon. He learned that she had a standing hair appointment every 4 weeks at a salon on Hawthorne. He learned that she liked to run at Laurelhurst Park on her days off. All of this information he stored away, building a profile, learning her patterns, waiting for the right opportunity. November turned to December. Christmas decorations went up around the hospital. Jennifer picked up extra shifts to help pay for presents for her nieces and nephews. She felt happy, lighter than she'd felt in months. On December 19th, Jennifer was scheduled to work her regular Tuesday night shift. She arrived at the hospital at 10:45 p.m., parked on the second level, her usual spot was available, and headed into work. It was a busier night than usual. The ER flooded with flu cases and a multi-vehicle accident on I-84 that brought in 4 patients simultaneously. Jennifer barely had time to think, moving from patient to patient, starting IVs, administering medications, coordinating with doctors and other nurses. Around 2 a.m., during a brief respite, she remembered that she'd forgotten to call her sister back about Christmas plans. She pulled out her cell phone, a bulky Motorola that she just bought a few months earlier, and stepped into the break room to make the call. The break room was empty, which was unusual. Typically at this time of night, at least 1 or 2 people were on break, but tonight, everyone seemed to be busy with the influx of patients. Jennifer dialed her sister's number. It rang 4 times before going to voicemail. "Hey, it's me," she said after the beep. "Sorry I didn't call earlier. Work's been crazy. About Christmas Eve? Yes, I can make it, and yes, I'll bring the pies. Call me tomorrow. Love you." She hung up and stood there for a moment, allowing herself 30 seconds of quiet before heading back to the chaos of the ER. That's when she noticed the coffee pot was empty. She'd been running on caffeine all night, and she needed another cup to make it through the next 4 hours. She started a fresh pot, waiting as it brewed. Her mind already moving through her mental checklist of patients and tasks. The coffee maker gurgled and hissed, filling the small room with the smell of fresh coffee. The door opened behind her. Jennifer turned, expecting to see Sheila or one of the other nurses. It was Marcus Webb. Jennifer's heart stopped. "What are you doing here? You're not scheduled tonight." "I picked up an extra shift," Marcus said, stepping into the break room and closing the door behind him. They were short-staffed in the surgical unit. One of the orderlies called in sick. "Oh," Jennifer said, trying to keep her voice neutral despite the alarm bells ringing in her head. "Well, I should get back to the ER. It's busy tonight." She moved toward the door, but Marcus shifted, not quite blocking her way, but making it impossible to pass without getting very close to him. "We need to talk," he said. "No, we don't. HR said no contact except for work necessities." "This is a work necessity. I need you to know that you almost got me fired with your lies." "I didn't lie about anything." "You told them I harassed you, that I cornered you, that I made you feel unsafe. All I did was be nice to you." Jennifer's training as a nurse included de-escalation techniques for dealing with agitated patients. She employed them now, keeping her voice calm and her body language non-threatening. "Marcus, I understand you're upset, but this isn't the time or place for this conversation. I need to get back to my patients." "You need to listen to me," Marcus said, and his voice had taken on a quality that made Jennifer's blood run cold. "You need to understand what you did. You tried to destroy my reputation. You made me out to be some kind of predator when all I ever did was care about you." "I'm going to leave now," Jennifer said firmly. "Please step away from the door." She moved toward him, prepared to push past if necessary. But as she got close, Marcus's hand shot out and grabbed her wrist. "I'm not done talking to you." "Let go of me." Jennifer's voice was loud now, hoping someone would hear, hoping someone would come. But the ER was at the other end of the corridor, around 2 corners. The break room was isolated. Even if someone heard her raised voice, they might not think anything of it. People had intense conversations in break rooms all the time. "You owe me an apology," Marcus hissed, his grip on her wrist tightening. "You owe me." Jennifer didn't let him finish. Years of self-defense classes kicked in automatically. She stomped hard on his instep with her heel, twisted her wrist sharply to break his grip, and drove her palm up toward his nose. Marcus jerked back, avoiding the palm strike, but loosening his hold enough for Jennifer to break free. She ran for the door, yanked it open, and sprinted down the hallway screaming, "Help! Someone help me!" 2 nurses and a resident came running. Jennifer, shaking and breathless, pointed back toward the break room. "Marcus Webb just assaulted me. He grabbed me. He wouldn't let me leave." Security was called immediately. They found Marcus still in the break room, looking dazed, insisting it was all a misunderstanding, that he'd just wanted to talk to her and she'd overreacted. But this time, there were witnesses to the aftermath. This time, there was Jennifer's wrist already showing the beginning of bruises where Marcus had grabbed her. This time, the hospital couldn't just quietly move him to a different shift. The police were called. Marcus Webb was arrested at 3:17 a.m. on December 20, 1995, and charged with assault. The investigation that followed revealed the pattern that had been invisible before. Portland PD contacted the hospitals where Marcus had previously worked. One by one, women came forward, nurses, techs, even a female doctor, with stories that were eerily similar to Jennifer's. Marcus would fixate on a woman, usually someone he worked with on night shift. He'd be friendly at first, helpful, always around. Then he'd make his move, ask her out, express interest. If rejected, he'd become cold, distant, threatening. Several women reported being followed. One reported finding him in her apartment building's parking garage, seemingly by coincidence, multiple times. Each hospital had quietly let him go, given neutral references, passed the problem along rather than deal with it. Each woman had been made to feel like she was overreacting, being paranoid, misinterpreting innocent behavior. But when detectives searched Marcus's apartment, they found a box hidden in his closet. Inside were photographs, dozens of them, taken with a telephoto lens. Jennifer at the grocery store, Jennifer jogging in the park, Jennifer getting out of her car at her apartment. Most chilling were the photos taken through her apartment window, showing her in her living room, unaware she was being watched. There were also photographs of other women from the other hospitals where Marcus had worked, a whole collection of surveillance photos, organized in folders labeled with names and dates. Marcus Webb had been stalking women for years, escalating with each new target, getting bolder. Jennifer had been the first one to fight back hard enough, loud enough, and soon enough to stop the pattern before it reached its inevitable violent conclusion. At trial, prosecutors presented evidence from Jennifer's case along with testimony from 5 other women Marcus had stalked. A psychiatric evaluation revealed that Marcus suffered from erotomania, a delusional belief that women were in love with him and that their rejections were actually secret messages of affection. Combined with narcissistic personality disorder and poor impulse control, he was, according to the psychiatrist who evaluated him, a danger to women and highly likely to escalate to more serious violence. The defense tried to paint Marcus as a lonely man who'd misread social cues, who'd made mistakes but never intended any real harm. But the photographs told a different story. The detailed logs they found in his apartment, documenting Jennifer's schedule, her routines, her movements, told a different story. Marcus Webb was convicted of assault, stalking, and multiple counts of harassment. He was sentenced to 8 years in prison. Jennifer attended every day of the trial. When the verdict was read, she cried, not from fear or trauma, but from relief. Relief that he'd been stopped. Relief that other women would be safe from him. Relief that she'd trusted her instincts and fought back. The case led to significant changes at St. Catherine's Hospital and eventually throughout Oregon's hospital system. New policies were implemented for background checks on employees. A formal protocol was established for reporting and investigating harassment complaints. Most importantly, hospitals could no longer simply pass problem employees along with neutral references. They had to disclose documented complaints. Jennifer continued working as an ER nurse, though she eventually moved to day shift. She met a teacher named David at her niece's school play, married him 2 years later, and had 2 daughters who grew up hearing their mother's story about trusting your gut and fighting back. She became an advocate for workplace safety, particularly for women in healthcare who work night shifts. She gave talks at nursing schools, teaching young nurses to recognize warning signs, to trust their instincts, to report concerning behavior no matter how small seemed. The thing about predators, she would tell audiences, is that they rely on our socialization as women to be polite, to not make waves, to give people the benefit of the doubt. They count on us second-guessing our instincts because we don't want to seem paranoid or accusatory. But your instincts exist for a reason. That feeling in your gut that something's wrong, listen to it. It might save your life. it's unlikely to be granted. Jennifer, now in her 60s and semi-retired from nursing, still keeps in touch with several of the other women who testified against Marcus. They formed a bond through their shared experience, supporting each other through the trial and its aftermath. What Marcus took from me, Jennifer reflected in a 2019 interview, was my sense of safety at work, my ability to trust friendly gestures at face value. But what I gained was a crystal clear understanding of my own strength. I fought back, I survived, and I helped protect other women from going through what I went through. That matters. That makes a difference. The night of December 19, 1995 was the last time Jennifer Torres felt like a victim. Every moment since then, she's chosen to be a survivor instead, not just someone who lived through an ordeal, but someone who fought back, who testified, who used her experience to protect others. That matters. That makes a difference. She still parks on the second level of parking garages when she can. She still looks over her shoulder, still trusts her instincts without apology. The fear Marcus Webb tried to instill in her transformed into vigilance, awareness, strength. And on the anniversary of the night she fought back, Jennifer and her daughters go out for Mexican food at that restaurant Marcus had mentioned, the one he'd suggested taking her to on their first date that never happened. It's her way of reclaiming that piece of her story, turning what could have been a symbol of victimhood into a celebration of survival. The ripple effects of Jennifer's case extended far beyond St. Catherine's Hospital and far beyond the criminal justice system. In 1997, partly inspired by Jennifer's case and others like it, Oregon passed legislation requiring healthcare facilities to conduct more thorough background checks on employees, including contacting previous employers and specifically asking about any documented complaints of harassment or inappropriate behavior. The law also mandated that hospitals provide safety training for all staff, particularly those working night shifts, and required security escorts to be available 24/7 for any employee who requested one. St. Catherine's went even further, installing emergency call buttons in break rooms, medication rooms, and other isolated areas where staff might find themselves alone. Dr. Susan Chen, the chief of emergency medicine at St. Catherine's during the Marcus Webb case, used the incident as a wake-up call for the medical community. We had created a culture where efficiency trumped safety, Dr. Chen said in a 2000 interview with the Journal of Emergency Medicine. We expected our night shift staff, predominantly women, to work in isolated areas during vulnerable hours, and we didn't provide adequate protection or take their concerns seriously when they raised them. Jennifer Torres could have died on our watch, in our hospital, and it would have been our fault for not listening to her. Dr. Chen became a national advocate for workplace safety in healthcare settings, particularly addressing the unique vulnerabilities of night shift workers. Her research revealed disturbing statistics. Women working night shifts in hospitals were 3 times more likely to experience stalking, harassment, or assault than those working day shifts, yet were significantly less likely to report incidents for fear of not being believed or being labeled as difficult. The problem, Dr. Chen's research showed, was systemic. Healthcare facilities operated under a culture of team harmony that inadvertently silenced victims. Women who reported concerns about male colleagues were often told they were misinterpreting friendly behavior, being oversensitive, or causing drama that disrupted the team dynamic. We essentially gaslit our female employees, Dr. Chen said bluntly. We told them their instincts were wrong, that they were overreacting, that they needed to be team players, and in doing so, we enabled predators like Marcus Webb to move freely through our institutions, targeting vulnerable women with impunity. One of the other women who testified at Marcus's trial was Rebecca Chung, a radiology technician who had worked with Marcus at a hospital in Seattle before he moved to Portland. Rebecca's story was hauntingly similar to Jennifer's. Marcus had befriended her, asked her out, been rejected, and then made her life at work increasingly uncomfortable through a campaign of subtle intimidation. He would show up wherever I was, Rebecca testified. If I was in the cafeteria, he'd sit at the table next to mine. If I went to my car, he'd somehow be in the parking garage at the same time. He never did anything I could point to as explicitly threatening, but the message was clear. I see you. I'm watching you. You can't get away from me. Rebecca had filed a complaint with HR at her Seattle hospital. They'd conducted an investigation, interviewed Marcus, and concluded that there was insufficient evidence of harassment. Marcus claimed he was just being friendly, that any encounters in the cafeteria or parking garage were coincidental, that Rebecca was misinterpreting his behavior. 3 months later, exhausted by the constant anxiety and feeling unsupported by her employer, Rebecca quit her job. She found out later that Marcus had left that hospital 6 weeks after she did, accepting a position at another facility, the one in Tacoma where he'd gone before, eventually landing at St. Catherine's. He basically ran me out of my job, Rebecca said, and the hospital let it happen. They chose to believe him over me. Chose to see his behavior as innocent rather than threatening. And then when I left, they gave him a neutral reference that allowed him to move on to his next victim. During the trial, prosecutors brought forward employment records showing that Marcus had worked at 7 different hospitals in Washington and Oregon over an 8-year period. His tenure at each facility averaged 18 months, long enough to establish himself as reliable, not so long that his pattern of fixating on female colleagues became too obvious. At each hospital, there were complaints. Sometimes they were formal reports filed with HR. Sometimes they were informal concerns raised to supervisors. But in every case, the complaints were minimized, dismissed, or resulted in nothing more than a conversation with Marcus about maintaining professional boundaries. The system was designed to protect the institution, not the employees, said Margaret Larson, an employment attorney who represented several of Marcus's victims in civil suits against their former employers. Hospitals were more concerned about potential lawsuits from employees they disciplined or fired than they were about the safety of their female staff, so they took the path of least resistance, do the minimum required investigation, give the benefit of the doubt to the accused, and hope the problem resolves itself, usually by the victim leaving. The civil suits resulted in significant settlements for several of Marcus's victims, as well as policy changes at multiple healthcare institutions across the Pacific Northwest. But more importantly, they sparked a national conversation about workplace safety in healthcare and the systemic failures that allowed predators to move from institution to institution, leaving a trail of victims behind them. In the years following the trial, Jennifer became close friends with several of the women who testified against Marcus. They formed an informal support group, meeting quarterly for dinner and staying in touch via email, a technology that was just becoming commonplace in the late 1990s. At one of these dinners in 1998, the conversation turned to how they'd all missed or ignored early warning signs. "He was so normal," said Rebecca. "That's what I keep coming back to. He wasn't some obviously creepy guy lurking in shadows. He was friendly, well-liked, good at his job. People trusted him." "That's exactly why he was so dangerous," added Linda Morrison, a nurse from the Tacoma hospital where Marcus had worked. "Predators don't look like monsters. They look like the nice guy who brings you coffee, who offers to help, who seems genuinely concerned about your safety. They weaponize kindness." Jennifer nodded. "The coffee, I remember that so clearly. He brought me coffee from the doctor's lounge, said I looked tired. At the time, I thought it was thoughtful. Now I wonder if he put something in it." The table went silent. None of them had considered that possibility before. "Did you drink it?" Linda asked. "Some of it, yeah. I felt really exhausted later that shift, but I'd been working long hours. I just thought I was tired." Jennifer paused, the implications settling over her. God, what if he'd been drugging me? What if that's why he was so confident about following me to the parking garage? He thought I'd be too impaired to resist? They never got confirmation of that theory. Toxicology tests hadn't been run at the time, and by the time they thought to ask the question, it was far too late. But it added another layer of horror to an already disturbing story. Marcus hadn't just been stalking and harassing. He may have been systematically incapacitating his victims to make them more vulnerable. "We need to do something," Jennifer said. "We need to make sure other women don't go through what we went through. We need to make sure hospitals take these complaints seriously from the start." That conversation led to the formation of Healthcare Workers Against Violence, HWAV, a nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting healthcare employees who experienced harassment, stalking, or violence in the workplace. Jennifer served as the organization's first president, using her nursing background and personal experience to develop training programs, advocate for policy changes, and provide resources for victims. HWAV's training program, which became mandatory at hundreds of hospitals across the country, taught healthcare workers to recognize the warning signs of predatory behavior. Forced teaming, using we language to create artificial intimacy. "We should grab coffee. We make a great team." Charm and niceness, being excessively friendly or helpful, especially when it's not reciprocated or requested. Too many details. Offering elaborate explanations for behavior that should be simple, showing up in the parking garage by coincidence, but having a long story about why they were there. Loan sharking, giving unsolicited help in order to create a sense of obligation. Discounting the word no, refusing to accept rejection, continuing to pursue contact despite clear boundaries. Boundary testing, gradually pushing limits to see what they can get away with. These weren't behaviors that individually indicated someone was dangerous. People could be friendly and helpful without being predators. But the combination of these behaviors, especially when they persisted after boundaries were set, formed a recognizable pattern. The key, Jennifer would tell audiences at training sessions, is trusting your gut. If someone's behavior makes you uncomfortable, even if you can't articulate exactly why, that discomfort is your intuition telling you something is wrong. Don't dismiss it. Don't rationalize it away. Listen to it. The new law defines stalking as repeated and unwanted contact that would cause a reasonable person to fear for their safety or the safety of others, and included behaviors like surveillance, following, and showing up at someone's home or workplace. The amended law also created a new category of cyberstalking to address the growing problem of harassment via email and internet chat rooms. This forward-thinking addition would prove prescient as technology advanced and new forms of stalking emerged. Detective Sarah Morrison, who had led the investigation into Marcus Webb, became an expert on stalking cases and was frequently called to testify in legislative hearings about the need for stronger laws and better enforcement. The thing about stalkers, Detective Morrison testified before the Oregon State Legislature in 1999, is that they're playing a long game. They're patient. They gather information gradually, test boundaries slowly, escalate incrementally. By the time the victim realizes they're in danger, the stalker has often been conducting surveillance for weeks or months. She showed legislators the photographs that had been found in Marcus's apartment. Hundreds of images of women going about their daily lives, completely unaware they were being watched and documented. These women thought they were safe, Detective Morrison said. They thought they were just living their lives. But Marcus Webb was creating a detailed profile of each of them, learning their patterns, planning his approach. And he was able to do this because he had legitimate access to them through his job. He was trusted, he was welcomed into their workspace, and he used that access to stalk them. The testimony was powerful enough to convince several legislators who had been on the fence about expanding stalking laws. The bill passed with strong bipartisan support. As the years passed and the immediate trauma of the Marcus Webb case faded, Jennifer found herself reflecting on the broader implications of what had happened. She began to see her experience not as an isolated incident, but as part of a much larger pattern of violence against women that society had normalized and minimized. In 2005, she enrolled in graduate school, earning a master's degree in public health with a focus on violence prevention. Her thesis, Workplace Stalking in Healthcare Settings, a systems-level analysis, became required reading in many public health programs. The thesis examined how multiple system failures had enabled Marcus Webb's predatory behavior. Healthcare institutions that prioritized reputation over safety, background check systems that allowed problematic employees to move freely between employers, HR departments that protected institutions rather than employees, law enforcement that was slow to take stalking seriously, and a broader culture that socialized women to be accommodating and doubt their own instincts. Marcus Webb is in prison, Jennifer wrote in her conclusion, but the systems that enabled him remain largely intact. Until we address these systemic failures, there will be other Marcus Webbs, charming predators who exploit institutional weaknesses and cultural blind spots to target vulnerable women. Her thesis caught the attention of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, which at the time was beginning to focus more resources on violence prevention as a public health issue. Jennifer was invited to join a CDC working group developing guidelines for violence prevention in healthcare settings. The guidelines, published in 2007, included recommendations that are now standard practice at most hospitals: comprehensive background checks that include direct contact with previous employers about any documented behavioral concerns, mandatory reporting of harassment complaints to state licensing boards, security escorts available 24/7, emergency call buttons in isolated areas, training for all employees on recognizing and reporting concerning behavior, and zero-tolerance policies for harassment and stalking. These guidelines, Jennifer said at the launch event, represent a fundamental shift in how we think about workplace safety in healthcare. We're finally acknowledging that violence and harassment aren't just isolated incidents to be dealt with reactively. They're preventable public health problems that require systematic intervention. In 2010, Jennifer received a letter from an unexpected source, Marcus Webb himself. He'd gotten her contact information through HWAV's public website and had written to her from prison. The letter was long, 6 pages of small, cramped handwriting. In it, Marcus apologized for what he'd done, claimed he'd spent years in therapy working on his issues, said he understood now why his behavior was wrong and how much harm he'd caused. "I was sick," he wrote. "I had delusional beliefs about relationships, about women, about what it meant when someone was friendly to me. I've done a lot of work in therapy to understand where those beliefs came from and how to challenge them. I'm not making excuses for what I did. I'm just trying to explain that I wasn't in control of my own thoughts and actions. I was driven by compulsions I didn't understand." The letter went on to ask for Jennifer's forgiveness, to say that he thought about her often, that he hoped she was doing well, that he was proud of the advocacy work she'd done. Jennifer read the letter 3 times, feeling a complex mix of emotions: anger that he'd contacted her after all these years, discomfort at the idea that he thought about her and followed her advocacy work, sadness at the transparent manipulation in his words, and a cold certainty that nothing had fundamentally changed. She consulted with Dr. Richard Santos, a forensic psychologist who specialized in stalkers and had testified at Marcus's trial. "What should I do with this?" she asked, showing him the letter. Dr. Santos read it carefully, his expression growing darker. "Don't respond, not one word. This letter isn't about remorse or healing, it's about reestablishing contact. Notice how he talks about thinking of you often, being proud of your work? He's still obsessing over you. He's still following what you do. This letter is a boundary violation disguised as an apology." "That's what I thought," Jennifer said. "But part of me wondered if I was being unfair, if maybe he really has changed." "Jennifer, I evaluated this man. I've reviewed his prison records and therapy notes. He goes through the motions in therapy, says what he needs to say to make progress through the system, but there's no genuine insight or change. He's learned to be better at hiding his true thoughts, that's all. If he's released again, he'll reoffend. I'd stake my reputation on it." Jennifer filed the letter away and reported it to Marcus's parole officer, documenting yet another boundary violation to be added to his record. She never responded to him, and over the years, several more letters arrived, each one alternating between apologetic and resentful, between claiming to be reformed and blaming her for ruining his life. Each letter she turned over to authorities. Each letter became more evidence that Marcus Webb remained dangerous, that his release would pose a serious risk to public safety. By 2015, Jennifer had become a nationally recognized expert on workplace violence prevention. She'd published dozens of articles, consulted with healthcare systems across the country, and served on advisory boards for federal agencies. But her most important work, she felt, was the direct support she provided to women going through experiences similar to what she'd endured. Through HWAV, Jennifer mentored dozens of women who were dealing with stalking, harassment, or workplace violence. She listened to their stories, validated their experiences, helped them navigate reporting systems and legal processes, and reminded them that they weren't crazy, weren't overreacting, weren't alone. One of these women was Emma Rodriguez, a 28-year-old pharmacy technician who reached out to HAV in 2014. Emma's story was eerily familiar. A male colleague who'd been friendly at first, then asked her out, then became cold and intimidating when she declined, then started following her. "I went to HR," Emma told Jennifer during their first phone call. "They said there wasn't enough evidence to do anything. They said he has a right to shop at the same grocery store I do, to get gas at the same station, to park his car in the employee parking lot. They made me feel like I was paranoid." "You're not paranoid," Jennifer said firmly. "If someone is repeatedly showing up in places where you are, that's not coincidence. That's surveillance. Your instincts are telling you you're in danger because you are in danger." Jennifer helped Emma document everything, taking photos, writing down dates and times, keeping records of every encounter. She helped Emma file a police report and connected her with an attorney who specialized in workplace harassment cases. Most importantly, she helped Emma trust herself, to believe that her fear was legitimate and her concerns were valid. 6 months later, Emma's stalker was arrested after he broke into her apartment. Police found a journal in his car detailing months of surveillance, where Emma went, who she saw, what she wore. Thanks to the documentation Emma had kept on Jennifer's advice, prosecutors had a strong case. He was convicted and sentenced to 5 years in prison. "You saved my life," Emma told Jennifer after the trial. "If you hadn't believed me, if you hadn't helped me document everything, if you hadn't convinced me I wasn't crazy, I don't know what would have happened." Stories like Emma's reinforced for Jennifer why her work mattered. The criminal justice system, the healthcare system, the entire social infrastructure still failed women more often than it protected them. But individual advocacy, person by person, case by case, could make a difference. In December 2020, 25 years after the night she fought back against Marcus Webb, Jennifer gave a keynote address at a national conference on healthcare workplace safety. She was 67 years old now, silver-haired and grandmother to 5, semi-retired from nursing, but still active in advocacy work. She stood at the podium and looked out at an audience of several hundred healthcare workers, administrators, and safety professionals. 25 years ago, she began, I was a night shift ER nurse who had a feeling that something was wrong. A male colleague was paying too much attention to me. He showed up in places where I was. He offered to walk me to my car in a way that felt more threatening than protective. And when I reported my concerns, I was initially dismissed. I was told I was overreacting, being paranoid, misinterpreting friendly behavior. She paused, letting that sink in. I was lucky. I had good instincts and I trusted them. When that man grabbed me in a break room at 3 in the morning, I fought back. And because I fought back, because there was physical evidence, because I had documented everything leading up to that moment, he was stopped. He was convicted. He went to prison. Another pause. But I shouldn't have had to fight him. The system should have protected me long before it came to that. And that's why I've spent the last 25 years working to change these systems, so that other women don't have to be grabbed, don't have to fight, don't have to risk their lives before someone takes their concerns seriously. She talked about the progress that had been made, better policies, stronger laws, more awareness. But she also talked about how much work remained. Women still weren't believed. Complaints still weren't taken seriously. Predators still moved from institution to institution. The Marcus Webbs of the world are still out there, Jennifer said. They're charming, they're helpful, they're trusted, and they're dangerous. Our job, all of our jobs, is to create systems and cultures where these predators can't operate, where women are believed from the start, where boundaries are respected, and where safety is prioritized over institutional reputation. The speech received a standing ovation. Afterward, dozens of people approached Jennifer to thank her, to share their own stories, to ask for advice. One young woman, probably in her mid-20s, waited until the crowd had cleared before approaching. "Ms. Torres, I just wanted to thank you. I'm a nursing student, and we studied your case in our workplace safety class. Because of what you went through, because of what you did afterward, I'm going into this profession with my eyes open. I know to trust my instincts. I know to document everything. I know that my safety matters more than being polite or accommodating. You gave me that gift." Jennifer hugged her, blinking back tears. "You're going to be a great nurse, and you're going to be safe because you already understand what it took me years to learn. Your instincts are valid, and you don't owe anyone your comfort or your safety." Marcus Webb, now in his mid-50s, remains incarcerated. His projected release date has been pushed back multiple times due to parole violations and incidents of threatening behavior toward female prison staff and visitors. Mental health professionals who evaluate him continue to conclude that he poses a high risk of reoffending if released. In 2022, he filed a lawsuit against Jennifer Torres and HWAV, claiming that their advocacy work and public discussion of his case had violated his privacy and made his rehabilitation impossible. The lawsuit was dismissed, with the judge noting that Jennifer had every right to discuss her own experience and that Marcus's conviction was a matter of public record. It was his final attempt to exert control over the woman who'd escaped him 27 years earlier. Like all his other attempts, it failed. Jennifer Torres still lives in Portland, though she moved years ago from that small apartment in Southeast to a house in a neighborhood with better lighting and more people around. She's married to David, the teacher she met at her niece's school play, and they've built a life filled with family, friends, and meaningful work. She still thinks about that December night in 1995, but not with fear anymore. She thinks about it as the moment she discovered her own strength, the moment she refused to be a victim, the moment she fought back and won. And she thinks about all the women she's helped since then, all the Emma Rodriguezes who reached out to HAW feeling scared and alone, who left feeling validated and empowered. She thinks about the policy changes, the training programs, the laws that bear her fingerprints, even if not her name. One life saved at a time, one system changed at a time, one woman believed at a time. That's the legacy of December 19, 1995. Not just that Jennifer Torres fought back against Marcus Webb, but that she refused to let that be the end of the story. She transformed her trauma into advocacy, her fear into action, her survival into a blueprint for others. The night shift at hospitals across America is safer now because of her. Women working late hours, walking to their cars in dimly lit parking garages, dealing with colleagues who make them uncomfortable, they have better protections, clearer reporting procedures, more reason to believe they'll be taken seriously if they speak up. It's not perfect. The work is never done, but it's better than it was, and that matters. Jennifer Torres made sure it matters.